welcome back to another help video. So today I'm going to be going through this activity, which is on Canvas on the week 1 module, I believe. Let me double check. Yeah, so Unit 1, recording behavior. So if you go down to the bottom of the page, there's a recording behavior calculating IOA activity. I'm going to be going through that with you guys today. Before, of course, you should make sure you've gone through the modules. You should definitely listen to the lecture and read the chapter because this is going to be building off of things that you would have learned through that. So I think you'll be pretty confused if you haven't done that already. I would also suggest doing the activity on your own first, even if you're a little confused. Just do your best. It's not graded, so it's really in your best interest to just kind of go through it and practice and see what you know and what you don't know. I'm also not going to be going through the whole video today because I think it will just take a long time and it might get a little confusing. So it would be helpful for you to be familiar with the video and the activity as well. If you do have specific questions on the video, you can go into the Zoom help sessions, of course, and I'm sure they will be able to share their screen with you and go through that. And yeah, if you need to pause this video and go back and refer to this video, I would suggest that as well. Just do whatever you need to do to go through this. So let's get started. So I have the data sheet. It would be helpful for you to go through that as well. So I have mine over here. So the first thing, before we get started, I just wanted to make note, I am going through the worksheet that we did together in class last semester. We did try our best as a class to come to a consensus on these things, but even then, we didn't exactly agree on everything. That's really why we do the IOA calculations, because as we heard in lecture, you really want to get a 90% agreement, but if you have 80%, that's acceptable. And that's because observers are not always going to agree on everything. But if it's a high enough agreement rate, then that means you're pretty much on the same page. And if it's too low, you know, okay, well, maybe I need to go through the definition and change that a little bit, or maybe I need to collaborate with my other observers and see what's going wrong. But we're never really expected to have total agreement. So if your answers are a little bit different, that's okay. Just you want to make sure that they're, similar and that you're at least getting the point of the activity. Okay, so with that, we're going to go ahead and go through this. So you want to start with coming up with a behavioral definition. So for this definition, you want to come up with an operational definition that is, it's very clear and it's specific and it's objective. You don't want any sort of opinion going into that. You want things that are very observable and that, your goal is for other observers to be able to see the same exact thing as you. So you want it to be specific to the point where, there's not a whole lot of questioning going on, to the best of your ability, of course. So for our definition, we put, for eating lunch, it would mean putting food in her mouth and chewing it. I do think we at first added chewing the food and swallowing it, but we realized through watching the video that was actually kind of a little bit hard to see and is kind of getting confusing. So we took that out. You could also add things such as what time of day it is, what the setting is, things like that, depending on where you're observing. But we kept it pretty simple. We just putting food in her mouth and chewing it. Of course, as time goes on, if you notice there's not a lot of agreement or there's issues with observations, you may want to come back to this definition and change it. Okay, so the next step you want to do is the duration recording. So for this one, you're going to watch the whole video, and anytime you see her engaging in the behavior the way you defined it, you're going to time it from the beginning, the onset of the behavior to the end, the offset, and then you're going to do that throughout the whole video. So let's just say, and these numbers are not exact. I tried to go through it as if I was watching it for the first time, but of course, you can't really do that. So I kind of made up my numbers a little bit. So yours might be different. But let's say the first time you watched it, you got 108 seconds of the behavior. Okay, so then you go through and you think about, okay, well, when I watched the video, did I have trouble deciding if something was the behavior or not? And so maybe let's just say the first time you just putting food in her mouth, but then upon watching the video, you realized, well, sometimes she put the food in her mouth, but she didn't really chew it. So I don't know if I would count that as eating lunch. So let's say the second time around, you add the chewing component. So then you would go through the video and watch it a second time. And then you would probably get a lower number since your definition is going to be a little bit more specific. So let's say the second time you got 94 seconds. So between these two durations, you're going to want to find the IOA, and we know that to find this, you divide the lower number by the higher number. So we would do 94 divided by 8, or 108. And I would suggest using the values that you got on your own for this one. These are just example values. So 94 divided by 108 is an 87% IOA. Oops, sorry, 87%. So that would be pretty acceptable. It's not quite 90, but it is above 80. So we would accept that and say, okay, our definition is pretty good. Also, when we did this in class, people got a lot of different duration values. So that's another reason why I would suggest just using whatever you got, because it was a little bit harder for us to come to a consensus on those. Yeah, so that is what you would do for the duration recording. The next step is to do time sampling. So with the time sampling, Dr. D gave us the times that we are going to watch at. So you divide the observation up into intervals, and you only watch for a very specific and small amount of time during those intervals. So in the directions she told us, I will show you, you watch it for 5 seconds at the following times. So at 20 seconds, you watch it for only 5 seconds, and that is what you're using for your observation. And if she engaged in the behavior during those 5 seconds, it would be an occurrence, and if not, it would not be an occurrence. So I think for the first one at 20 seconds, that is one where during those 5 seconds, she was picking up the noodle and she was starting to put it toward her mouth, but she didn't actually put it in her mouth or do any chewing. So even though we can kind of guess, well, it looks like she's going to eat, since we're only looking at that time sample, the 5 seconds, and she did not engage in our definition of eating lunch, then that would not count as an occurrence. So that's why it gets a little bit tricky, because you're just looking at what you can observe. You're not looking at, intent or what you think is going to happen. We're just looking at what we can see. So I'm going to try to draw on here. Forgive me if it is a little bit messy. So for 20 seconds, we got no occurrence of the behavior. At 40 seconds, we did get an occurrence. So that would be a check mark. At 1 minute, we did get another occurrence. So that means in those 5 seconds at 1 minute, she did engage in the eating lunch behavior. At 1:20, she also engaged in it. 1:40, she also engaged in the behavior. At 2 minutes, she engaged in the behavior. And at 2:20, she did not. At 2:40, she did not. At 3 minutes, she did not. And at 3:20, she did not. So that is what we got in the class. If yours are a little bit different, that's okay. So we are just looking at those 5 seconds at each of these times. So hopefully that's what you did as well. If you got answers similar to this, I think you should be in a pretty good spot. And so next we're going to do interval recording. So for this one, it's a little bit different because you are watching for those whole intervals. So it is 10 seconds from the beginning of the video up until 1:40. So at each of the 10 seconds, and this video is nice because it gives you the little bells, so you don't really have to watch the time. So for this one, we are doing, let's see. So she says, be sure to use partial interval recording and not whole interval recording. So that means if the behavior occurs at any time during those 10 seconds, it would count. The difference with whole interval recording is that the behavior would have to occur as the name suggests, for the whole 10-second interval. But we are not doing that for this example. We're only doing partial interval. So that can mean it occurs at the very beginning, at the very end, in the middle, for a little bit of time, for most of the time. It doesn't really matter as long as we saw the behavior occurring at any point. Okay, so we're going to go through this one again. And we got, in the first interval, there was no occurrence. In the second interval, there was no occurrence. And at the third interval, there was no occurrence. So that would be 10 seconds, 20 seconds, and 30 seconds of the video. And then for the one that we did in class, we got from that point on that at all of these intervals, there was some instance of the behavior. So I'm going to go ahead and fill those in. That's what we kind of agreed on as a class. Oops. So that means in any of these 10-second intervals, we saw some instance of her engaging in the eating lunch behavior. So that is how we would go through the interval recording. Of course, for each of these, you would probably have to rewatch the video to make sure you're getting an accurate sample. It's kind of hard to do these at the same time, so you would definitely want to go through the video for each of these examples. So from there, we are going to do the IOA calculations. So let's see. So the first one we have chi, and what we're going to do here, and I do have another video that I did on IOA calculations. I did an example problem because I think that these sometimes tend to get people a little bit confused, and I just want to make sure that everybody gets a good understanding of it before we move on. So yeah, with that, we're going to compare our recording with Kai's recording. So let's see, the total agreement. So if you find you need a little bit of help with these, I would definitely go to my other video because I'm going to go more in depth on how we do this. So for this one, we're going to do total agreement intervals out of the total intervals. So we have 10 total intervals, and the agreement intervals, we're going to compare. Maybe I'm going to rewrite ours under here so that we can look at it more easily. Sorry, they're a little bit crooked. Oh, that one was bad. Okay, so we have check mark, and check mark. Okay, so if we go through this, we're going to see we have 10 total intervals, so we already did that. And then we're going to compare ones in which we agreed. So the first one we didn't, the second one we didn't, the third one we did. So for total agreement, it's on agreement of occurrence and non-occurrence, as long as there's some sort of agreement. So the third one we did, the fourth one we did, fifth one, and the sixth one we did, and the 8th and the 10th. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 agreement intervals out of 10 total intervals. That would give us 60% total agreement. Okay, and so then next we're going to move on to occurrence agreement. So this one is going to be any interval that has, or it's going to be any agreement intervals on occurrence out of any intervals that have at least one occurrence. So let's see, the first one, the second one, fourth one, fifth one, sixth one, 7th, 8th, 9, and 10 all have at least one occurrence between the two observers. So we are going to get our total out of 9. And so then we're going to go through and look at the ones in which we agreed. So I'm going to use the highlighter for this one so we can see a little bit better. So these are the ones in which we have at least one occurrence. And then if I go through with another color, these are going to be the ones that we had agreement on. So 4, 5, 6, 8, and 10. Those are ones that where we agreed on it. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 agreement occurrence out of 9. And that's going to be I already have the math on my paper, 55.5%. And then if we do non-occurrence, I'm going to erase these. So for non-occurrence, we're going to go through and find any interval that has at least one non-occurrence. Oh, I accidentally erased too much. Okay. So the first one and the second one, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth do not have any non-occurrence. 7 and 9. So here we only have 5 intervals that have at least one non-occurrence. And then we're going to go through the ones where we have agreement, which is 3. And that is the only one. So we have one non-occurrence agreement out of 5 intervals. And so that is going to be 20% non-occurrence agreement. So we're going to go ahead and do the same thing with the other 2 observers. So let me draw out our findings. Okay, so with this one, again, we have total agreement out of 10 because we have 10 total intervals. So we're going to go through and look at ones in which we have agreement, whether it is occurrence or non-occurrence. So with Malia, we have, let's see, this one is not agreement, or that one, or that one. That one is not, that one is not, that one is not. And then we have 7, 8, and 10 in which we agreed. So that one we only have 3 agreement out of 10 total intervals. And so that is 30%. Okay, so we're going to go through and do occurrence agreement. So if we find the ones where there is at least one instance of occurrence, that'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So all of the intervals have at least one occurrence. So again, we're going to do it out of 10. So we're going to go through and find ones in which we agreed on occurrence. So that is only going to be intervals 7, 8, and 10. So again, we have 3 out of 10. Which is 30%. Okay, and then we're going to go through and do the non-occurrence agreement. So I'm going to try to erase these without erasing everything else. Perfect. Okay. So we'll get our highlighter back and I'm going to go through ones that have at least one non-occurrence. So that will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 intervals with at least one non-occurrence. And then we're going to go through and find ones where there's agreement, and it looks like there are none. So that's going to be 0 out of 7, which of course comes out to 0%. So this would be one where we would kind of, notice that something's off. All of our IOAs are really low. So that would be kind of a sign to go through and maybe either evaluate our definition or kind of talk to Malia or Malaya, I'm not sure how you would say that, and you would want to maybe see, maybe she's not getting something, maybe, something's off. So that's a pretty clear indication that we are not getting much agreement on our observations. Okay, so we have one more to go through, and that is with Lucero. So let's go through and draw ours real quick, just so it's easier. Okay, so it's going to be the same thing. We're going to do total agreement, which is going to be out of 10. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have 6 intervals that we agreed on out of 10 total intervals, which is going to be 60%. Okay. And then next we're going to do our occurrence agreement. So it's the same thing as the other two. We're going to find any that have one occurrence at least. And that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then we're going to go through the ones where we have agreement. Let me write the 8 first. Okay, and so on interval 4, 6, 9, and 10 we have agreement. So that would be 4 agreement intervals out of 8 total occurrence intervals, which comes out to 50%. All right, and then the last step is to find our non-occurrence. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 intervals with 1 instance of non-occurrence. And then we have 1, 2, and that's it. 2 agreement on non-occurrence. So we got 2 out of 6, which is 33%. And again, the IOA is not great, but this is just an example. And yeah, you can see how ours compares to all the other observers. So hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. If you're still struggling with the IOA, I went through it in a little bit more detail and a little bit slower in my other video, so maybe that will help you a little bit. Yeah, so you can really see just how to do the different steps of recording the observations and doing the IOA calculations. So hopefully that's a little bit more helpful. And of course, if you need any more help, feel free to stop into any of the TA Zoom help sessions. Yeah, thank you.